Hi Titan Heroes, I am Shruti Pandey, welcome you all to the day one of our Web3 Titan LaunchPad program. It is now time we introduce you to your session facilitator Lakshya Gaur. Lakshya Gaur is a blockchain architect at Zeeve and has articulated nuances of blockchain technology. His knowledge of the subject matter powers his ability to communicate said matters to the masses for both experts and novices alike. I take immense pleasure in welcoming Lakshya onto the proverbial stage to present the session. Hi Lakshya, the stage is all yours.
Hi guys, welcome again. So this launchpad, I'm guessing the orientation has already been done, but I'll speak a few more points about it. First, I'll start with my day-to-day responsibilities so that it can help you understand what kind of background I come from. Right. So being a blockchain architect, it's not always that I have to design things, right, in terms of high-level or system-level designs. I don't do that daily. Most of my day-to-day task involves managing a lot of things, communicating a lot of things within team, outside of team, with clients, communicating things from client to teams. And it involves thinking. It involves thinking a lot on various problems, whether it is from blockchain perspective, from design perspective. When I say design, there are a lot of layers when it comes to any Web3 solution. So and there are layers of designs that we have to think into. And if I talk about the entire day, the coding part is just something that I miss way too much. But you guys have this opportunity, right? I'm guessing most of you are starting your career or are at early stages of your career, and you have this opportunity to, with these sessions that this team has organized, to get understanding of Web3 from people, not just me, from other people as well. There are going to be multiple people taking these sessions. So there are all experts in their fields of domains or in their fields of protocols that they manage. I myself have handled one specific protocol on Zeeve, which is a dedicated blockchain protocol which serves mostly enterprise segments. Right. We'll talk about what are these terms and what do they do exactly. And other than this, I've helped design Zeeve, their current infrastructure that runs the services that helps create blockchain networks and nodes and smart contracts and all the automation that you see on Zeeve. Or if you haven't seen, then maybe you should check it out. So that infrastructure, I've helped create that part. So that is a bit about me. I think that gives you enough knowledge and perspective of what we try to achieve with the courses that we have and the sessions that we're taking here today. All right, so why do we have to even talk about it at all, right? First thing that should be the question to address any problem or to address any topic is, do we even have to talk about it? Is it that substantial or that important to talk about? So there are a few figures that helps you understand. If you talk about strategic point of view, so these are all surveys that are done from other consultants, or you can say other companies, right? So these figures are coming directly from a report that was published by Deloitte. So if you see from strategic point of view, a lot of projects that you see in the industry today have this strategic priority to have this Web3 enablement, which means they're running on Web2 and they need to evolve themselves onto Web3, or there is a direct market penetration that allows them, the new players as well, to introduce Web3 projects. Then the next figure is, what are the number of solutions that you see in production that has or involves some amount of blockchain. So the number that you see here is very less, right? There are only 39% projects that are in production, and rest of the figures are usually dead even before they reach the market, right? So there are different points why these projects die in the middle, or why they can't even start at the early stages, or why can't they move across the ideation phase. Right? There are different factors that involves these problems, or that generally leads to these problems. Then the third factor is building teams in blockchain, right? That's where you guys come in. So building teams in blockchain is again a very crucial task, right? So the demand that you see is there, right? But the quality engineers that people need, that is missing right now in the market. You'll see a lot of protocols that are coming in the market, but the engineers to implement solutions that are required to involve these protocols are still missing, right? That's where maybe you guys could be the gap. If you successfully complete these courses, that's where you could bridge the gaps there. So there is very crucial demand of being the developer or being the industry expert on these topics. And then there is value chain, which basically addresses all the stakeholders involved in this action or in this process, right? So what are the values that different stakeholders are going to incorporate? That's the figure it represents. And then there is direct investment that you see. So investors are ready to invest out there, again, on the projects that actually make an impact and actually try to solve a problem. It's not just limited to Web3. You'll see that factor being implemented everywhere. If your product or the idea that you're pitching to an investor has some substantial growth factor, right? Has substantial productivity, or you can say the capability to address and then solve that problem. Any investor would be ready to pitch in there, depending upon what kind of commercial model you come up with. So that is always there. And if you see the investment, that is again a figure published out there. You'll see that investment is a crucial point, and a lot of investors are out there trying to hunt people who are into quality products or are developing quality products, right? So all of these factors directly lead to next thing, which is there is an immediate need to understand Web3. There's an immediate need to incorporate Web3 for a lot of products or projects that haven't implemented this. And then there is immediate need of engineers as well, right? Now let's talk about what has been there out there. What has been there, all this while, from Web 1 to Web 2 to Web 3, right? So if you talk about Web 1, you can understand it in these terms, where there used to be very early websites, or you can imagine static web pages that used to be there in the early .com businesses, right? This was the first version of web, where there was a person who was built the website, and there was this trust process missing from any consumer or customer to get this idea or get their heads around this idea that if I should order something from the website, if it's even legitimate, right? That is the idea. A lot of players back then took this advantage, right? They started their .com businesses, and they're very much successful at this point, Amazon being one of them. And then there are a lot of websites out there even at this point who started through this .com bubble, and now, or you can say that .com era, and now way too much successful. Obviously, there were few businesses that had to close down, and that's because the value that they were trying to provide was not that substantial, or the idea of the problem that they was trying to solve was again taken up by a bigger giant, right? Eventually. Now, Do was something of a web interaction where customers' involvement or the users' involvement was way too less, right? There was only static information that people could read. You can understand it in terms of advertisement. You would put down what you do as a service, what you provide as a product, and if the delivery route possible for these products that you're trying to sell through your .com website, right? That is it. There was no one-on-one interaction, or there was no two-way interaction. There was just one way of information flowing through your website. And then came the Web 2.0 era, where you'll see that customers or users themselves have started putting their content onto the internet, right, onto the web. It is the era that we live in today. That means you interact as much as through the platform in terms of different contents that you provide, different actions that you do. Right? If you talk about social media, we all have interacted, or we all have social media accounts at this point. Some of us have made a daily living out of it, or have made a career out of this, right? That as a product, and if there is a delivery route possible for these products that you're trying to sell through your .com website, right? That is it. There was no one-on-one interaction, or there was no two-way interaction. There was just one way of information flowing through your website. And then came the Web 2.0 era, where you'll see that customers or users themselves have started putting their content onto the internet, right, onto the web. It is the era that we live in today. That means you interact as much as through the platform, in terms of different contents that you provide, different actions that you do. Right? If you talk about social media, we all have interacted, or we all have social media accounts at this point. Some of us have made a daily living out of it, or have made a career out of this, right? That's possible because of the evolvement that our web or internet has seen through earlier ages. And us being a user now, these platforms are interactive. That means once you upload something, or once you put your content out there, there are millions of users, thousands of users waiting to interact with that content, and it's just a few clicks away or few shares away from you getting viral. And then it is now trying to what it is now trying to get involved into is Web 3.0. This era is yet to be established, or we can say that we are seeing the early stages of this part, where the content that you create, or the materials that you create, or whatever actions that you do are owned by you, right? If you look at Web 2, there are always one middleman, or you can say one platform, or one party, or one organization making sure that all of these contents, or all of these actions that you're doing are reaching the end users or end customers, right? They've established a trust where you don't have to worry about, at this point, if I should order from a website, or if I should put down my card details. That has all been established or accomplished through various stages of engineering that we've seen from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0 throughout the journey. Now, when we talk about Web 3.0, there is next level of ownership that we talk about, next level of decentralization, right? Where you can imagine the monetization that you see, or the content that you put down is controlled by you, and there is no middle party involved. That means, let's say if I talk about a very vague example, let's say if we talk about YouTube, right? If the YouTube updates its compliance policies, and one of the videos that you've already uploaded does not comply with their rules, there could be a scenario where they might shut that video down, or there has been scenarios where a lot of content providers had to had their videos demonetized. That again because the platform providers own the control there on your content, on your monetization. When we talk about Web 3.0, this means the control of the content is is all dedicated to you. You get to see or control the actions on your content, and the identities are all secured, and it gives you again some level of anonymity. Again, that depends on the type of application that we take in consideration here. So there are ways of exploration in Web 3.0. The main idea is to decentralize and distribute these actions, so there is no one single party or one single platform owning your actions and your content. That is the whole idea, right? I see a question here from Mujahid. Is there anything like Web 2.5? Is it a web combination of Web 2 tech with Web 3 tech, or it is something else? Right. I think I'm hearing this first time, but I think I can imagine this being the early stages of Web 3.0, where I think you can imagine it as Web3 applications, Web2 applications, allowing you to interact with Web3 applications, or Web2 applications being the bridge between Web 3.0, or paving the way for Web 3.0 applications. So I think best example here is NFT marketplaces, where you still interact through these platforms, right? For example, OpenSea, it's still a platform. It's still something owned by a dedicated company, but the content that you put down there is not owned by them, right? So you can start your own marketplace and the result won't change. The actions won't change. The OpenSea holds no right on the artworks that you've uploaded, even through them, right? So I think that could be one of the example of Web 2.5. Right, I hope that answers your question. Okay, moving on then. Right, so now we understand what is Web 1, or what has been Web 1, and what is Web 2, and what could be Web 3, right? Now, let's talk about what is Web 3 exactly. So it can simply be understood as third iteration of the internet. So that again is depicted by, or has been the part of the definition itself, right? The most important piece here is that it is peer-to-peer network. It is decentralized, right? It is a trustless and a permissionless system. So when we say trustless and permissionless, it doesn't mean that we don't have to trust the system. It means the algorithms or the cryptography involved to make these networks possible makes it trustless. That means you don't have to trust the party or the person you're interacting with. You just have to trust the process through which it is all happening, right? And when we say decentralized, it means the Web3 world is going to be decentralized in such a way there is not going to be one single server that you're going to talk to. So if you imagine again in a Web2 system, there is a dedicated, or you can say traditional client server architecture, where if I'm being the user, and if I have to download a file, what I'll do is let's say someone shared it on Drive, right, on Google Drive. What I'll do is I'll log into my Gmail account and I'll download it from there, right? That means me being the client has to request Google with my credentials and with the identification of that file, that please allow me to download this file. Google is going to check this part, and them storing this file are going to allow me to download this based on the credential and the permission that were allowed to that file while it was being shared. Now imagine this in a peer-to-peer or decentralized way. So these examples, these solutions are already out there. For example, if I talk about IPFS, it's one of the solutions which allow you to share files. Now there is no such permissioning system. That doesn't mean you can't create, or you can't put down your level of engineering on it and allow it to make a system where there could be identities and you could permission on these identities. You're free to do that. That is the you can say beauty, or you can say the crucial part of a Web3 system, that it allows you to put layers on top of it, right? So same way, let's say if we talk about IPFS system, the sequence is same. The party which has the file, or the user which has a file, or your friend who has a file, is going to put it down in the network, and this file that can be shared with you by sharing the ID that that particular file generated while it was uploaded, right? So when you're interacting with this system, you're not just interacting with one server. It's not ipfs.com where you go to put down your ID of the file and you're going to download that file. Now that file has the capability, or the user that has uploaded the file has the capability to distribute this file all across the network. Now that system, or IPFS network being the peer-to-peer network, allows you to download this file from anywhere, right? Now imagine a much more evolved system where your system or your laptop or your phone being the node for this part. I'll give you a very interesting example here. I'm sure we all have used torrent somewhere at in our lives at some point. It's a perfect example of peer-to-peer network and a decentralized network. So when you try to download a torrent, let's say you're trying to download a movie or a song or a video game that you want to play, you'll go to a torrent mirror which holds the magnetic link of that torrent, right? What you'll try to do is you'll click on that magnetic link and it tries to open up in your browser and prompts the client which is installed in your machine. Let's say if you talk about Windows, you have installed a client, a BitTorrent client, that gets prompted on that magnetic link and has the identifier. Again, it's just an identifier with a bunch of details. We're not going to go into the details that it stores. And it allows the capability for you to download that file. So once you click on or accept that link and start downloading from that particular file, what it'll do is it will start getting the trackers for that file. So what are trackers? Trackers are basically peers or you can say nodes that are seeding for that file. That means they have the partial data or they have 100% data, right? So what your client will do, it will start synchronizing or not synchronizing, but it'll try to sort these nodes or peers into, you can say, elements in an array where the least being or the first being the least ping. So whichever is closer to you or nearer to you, you will start fetching the files from him or from that node. Okay. Now again, these nodes could be the uptime of these nodes could be a problem. So your download speed may vary depending upon which seeder you're syncing from, right? And once the file has been successfully downloaded, now you become one of those nodes where people can start seeding, leeching from you, right? And you being the seeder. So that is how peer-to-peer file sharing network works. So yeah, I see a question there. It says, then what are leechers? So leechers are basically people who are downloading these files. That's why the term leech, because at that point they're not putting much into the network, but they're basically consuming, or you can say basically trying to get that file. So even I think in torrent they've started this Tron coin interaction somewhere. I was not able to explore it all throughout, but they started to speed up your download through some part of Trons, and I think you also get some Trons if you are regular seeders. So at some points, leechers could also be seeders. I mean, again, that has to be checked out. But yes, according to theory, at some point, some leechers could also be seeders. For example, let's say you're trying to download multiple files and you have successfully downloaded 5 out of 10 files. So for those five files, you could be seeders. I hope that answers your question. So that is being just one of the example of what could be Web3 or what exactly is Web3. So in all of these points, we've not talked about blockchain at all, right? So your question, you must be thinking, then what exactly is blockchain if Web3 is just peer-to-peer network and just decentralized nodes? So I'm not sure if all of the guys here are from engineering background, but considering you people are from engineering background and you've read already some problems of distributed systems. So the biggest problem in running a distributed system is the synchronization of distributed systems, right? There has been protocols, or you can say research papers, where people were trying to create distributed systems, which means when we say distributed, it means you're trying to create a system which is trying to solve one particular task, and that problem can be broken down into multiple pieces, right? Or you can imagine not just one problem, then multiple bunch of problems can be broken down into one single problem, and then you get the collected output. That is how you can imagine it, right? Basically sharing the load of the system. So if you are doing some processing on your local system and you try to attach one more laptop or one more server to your machine that you're working, now you should get if at a point you were consuming 100% of your storage or all the hardware resources, now it should be cut down by 50% in ideal phase. Now that means you can allow 50% more load onto your system. So that is just one way of looking at it. If we talk about Web3 problem, Web3 system, then being or creating a decentralized or distributed system has a big problem, which is synchronization. Now, blockchain solved the synchronization problem through consensus mechanism. Right? All of the nodes that are part of this network, or you can imagine an ecosystem, are trying to solve a bunch of tasks at a parallel speed, right? And they all are collectively moving towards one single goal, right? Or you can imagine, even if in a smart contract environment, there is a state machine which is global to all. When I say state machine, it could be EVM, right? You can imagine an EVM because it's also a state machine that has one single source of truth, or you can say a global state, which is replicated across all nodes, right? In an ideal scenario. In practical scenarios, there could be forks, there could be multiple systems where they are behind in syncing process. And practical scenario, there could be systems where these systems are behind in syncing process, or are still yet to come to that current global state. But still, it solves the problems of synchronization. Now, that is the entire idea of making a Web3 system or making a Web3 ecosystem. Okay, so again, there is a figure which helps you understand that there is again $500 million funds, international funds, that has already been invested into these domains. Again, in ventures or companies that are working in just in India. So that is again a very huge figure that gives you an idea that Web3 still has potential of evolving into bigger products, or you can say bigger ecosystem. It is you can imagine it this way, that ChatGPT movement has not arrived for Web3 solutions yet, right? Once it arrives, maybe at that point you can say that now we're seeing more consumer-focused application, and not just just NFTs or Web3 games. Now it is actually trying to solve problems that I can now it is trying to provide me solutions that I can use in my day-to-day life, right? So moving on, Web3 has different core constructs. It means there are different aspects or different components that people usually think of, or the people usually talk about when they hear the term Web3. And these are all important constructs that helps you understand the ecosystem, right? If Bitcoin was not there, or Ethereum was not there, if cryptocurrencies were not there, people won't be talking about existing Web3 solutions and the layer 2 solutions and app chain solutions that now we're seeing in the market at this point. If I talk about these core constructs, then first thing that you get to see is cryptographic tokens. Now, cryptographic tokens are one basic example or one basic application of using blockchain. They give you clear ownership, capability to transact with other people in the ecosystem, allows immutable audit trail. That means at any point of time you can go back and you can audit the entire system. Again, the clause not being that all the identities are anonymous, or you have some level of KYC inbuilt there, so that you can map the identities through the addresses that were created for distributing of these tokens. And then there are decentralized oracles, where you can create smart contracts where these oracle sets or data sets can help you make your smart contracts more reliable, and make your smart contracts be able to use some data endpoints to be fetched in your problem or solution that you're creating. And lastly, there are decentralized applications, which is one of the major construct that we're seeing at this point, and where it involves most of your engineering or involvement. Right? That is where the major scope of evolution lies, or you can say major scope of engineering lies. Where you can create your own applications, or you can say not just applications, dedicated chains or dedicated network or P2P or Web3 layers for your own custom solutions. For example, file sharing being one. You can imagine n number of solutions, a bunch of solutions that could you use this practice. Now that we understand some part of blockchain, let's talk about classifications of blockchains. So mostly smart blockchains are usually divided into two categories, public and private. And then there are two additional terms which you can imagine comes into picture where there are mix of blockchains, or you can say these blockchains are so huge in space, or you can say so huge in ecosystem that I had to be involved into a different name, right? So cryptographic tokens are usually tokens, you can imagine them, as tokens that are usually backed by an ecosystem, or you can say represents an asset, right? Usually they represent an asset, or they could represent an asset, have the capability to represent an asset. For example, these days people are creating utility-based NFTs, where these NFTs allow you to, let's say these NFTs could be key passes to an event, or these could be a ticket to, attend a session, or these kind of utilities that could be directly created. So tokens usually represent an assets, right? Tokens usually represent an asset that could be digitized. And when we talk about stable coins, these stable coins are usually the native currencies, or are backed by, you can say a fiat currency generally, right? In some cases, what people try to do is they also create dedicated chains for one single utility, which is again an idea that people again this is an expensive idea that usually does not go well. But yeah, we've seen people doing that as well. Like whitelist tokens. So I'm not sure, Aniket, what your question is. Whitelist tokens. If you mean whitelisting people for an action or something, maybe, then yes, I think you can use tokens to whitelist an action, or maybe you could put down more detail into your question if that could help me understand this part. Oh, okay. So for minting NFTs, they create whitelist tokens for early users. I'm not actually really aware of how minting exactly gives you permissioning on minting, but yeah, I understand the general idea of how they do minting of any, not just NFTs, but for any part or any token. So you have it could give you a whitelisting, or you can say a list of people who are allowed to mint that NFT. So I think your question maybe stands correct, that these NFTs itself, or the tokens that are connected to these NFTs could help you whitelist these addresses. So I think tokens are created, and if you talk about tokens on EVM, then these tokens usually follow ERC20 standard, right? And if you talk about NFTs, then these NFTs usually follow ERC721 standard. Now there has been new NFTs where you can do mix of both, which is I think 1155 standard, which gives you capability to either create art-based NFTs, and also you can involve ERC20 based tokens as well in that single NFT contract. So it's a mix of both, or you can say hybrid of both ERC20 tokens as well, and NFT artworks as well, or you can say NFT just plain NFT as well. So we were talking about classification of blockchains. So first blockchain that is very common is public blockchains. These blockchains we've already heard about, we've already interacted with these blockchains at some point. Classic examples being Bitcoin and Ethereum and Polygon, and bunch of other blockchains that are out there for public usage. And so if we talk about private blockchains, these blockchains are usually incorporated or created by or used by enterprises where they have a dedicated solution to run on top of these chains. So if, let's say, you want to create a Web3 solution or a blockchain solution for manufacturing, right, for a factory that manufactures some goods. Right? Let's take an example of any car manufacturing factory, right? So let's say they, in a typical manufacturing plant, let's say they create 50 cars per day, right? Maybe it's not practical, but let's not get into practical details. But let's say they create 50 cars per day, and to create these 50 or to basically assemble these 50 cars, they involve or incorporate per car they involve, let's say 100 assets, or let's say 100 raw materials, right? Could be engines, it could be seats, covers, anything. Now if you're creating that 50 cars a day and then 100 elements, then in your ERP systems, imagine the amount of transactions that are happening to deliver not just in one plant, for plants that are globally out there. Let's say even if you talk about India, let's say it has 10 plants, and imagine the number of transactions that are happening. So to support these TPS or transactions per second, the focus of private blockchains are usually on the performance side of things. So these blockchains are generally private, not because of just permission issues, also because they usually focus upon the performance side of things, where them being private allows these blockchain systems to put on more number of performance or more percentage of performance with just simple or being a very closed ecosystem or private consortium, right? And then there are hybrid blockchains where there is mix of both. You use public blockchain or public chain for some part of solution. Example, let's say a bank trying to introduce a stable coin, or a bank trying to do create a stable coin and then trying to interact with other banks on that or integrating that stable coin. So interaction between banks would be happening on private consortium, and interaction for normal public where they're interacting with that stable coin would be happening on public blockchain. So you would imagine a solution where these things could be mixed, right? Example being again a real estate industry, and yeah, that could be one of the example, or medical records. Medical records are also possible because let's say you have records of patients, that is some part of it is available to public, or let's say insurance agencies, and then hospitals and government agencies interacting with on these, or allowing stakeholders to do actions on these records on a private chain. That is again access controlled by typical agencies. And then there are consortiums which again involves hybrid networks, but in more complex. So I see a question which says, is there a validator? There's a question that says all websites are created in Web 2 can be also created in Web 3. So websites hosting usually require you to create a space, right? Let's say if you have even a S3 bucket that you can point to and you can store your HTML assets in there, should be able to create one. With Web 3, I'm not sure if there is a solution out there which can help you host your website, but if you can figure out the storage part, I think maybe using MPFS, then you need a domain to point your website to, right? Because a domain is again required. So the domain part I think could be solved by ENS, but yeah, I think this can be solved. It is possible to create a website, not totally in Web 3, but some parts of it would still be created in Web 2 parts or in Web 2 solutions. But yeah, you can try creating a website where some part of it you can create in Web 3 and some part of it would be in Web 2. Is there a validator in private blockchain? If there is, then how does a validator pick a transaction in case of private blockchain? So yes, there are validators in private blockchains too. That depends upon the blockchain or protocol that you choose to create your solutions. So transaction picking usually depends upon, so I'll tell you how those transitions happen. Imagine you're trying to create a Web3 application, right? What would happen usually is you'll create a website, right? Or let's say a normal front-end application where you will use MetaMask injector, whatever endpoint client is using for that environment or the the Web2 application that you created in, or a smart contract that you deployed in. It is going to switch the network according to the programming that you've done in your front-end application. But now imagine an application where the network that you want the public to interact to, or let's say there has to be some processing in the background also, for which you need an endpoint, right? what you'll do is you'll try to create a raw transaction, or you'll try to submit a transaction to a particular endpoint for which you need a dedicated host or node, right? Even these MetaMask injectors or these MetaMask networks have in the background they're using or they have this domain involved which submits your transaction onto the network. So you can add your own or create your own network, getting an endpoint maybe from a Zeeve, from any provider out there, and you can create your own custom network, right? So it depends upon the transaction that you're trying to choose. So whatever validator you choose and submit your transaction to, that validator is going to pick your transaction and solve it. Or what they usually do is they keep it in mempool and then they share it across with other validators as well. And that is how usually the transaction propagate. If that validator gets the transaction, it is going to solve it, and then other validators are going to match their result with it. We have Web3 examples. I'll not take much time here. Web3 examples. So these are Web3 examples of Web3 applications. Where first example being the gaming part, where again a lot of examples out there for gaming applications. Sandbox being the Minecraft type of game, and CryptoKitties being the very popular one, right? When they try to mine and farm assets, and then these assets can be shared with other players in the network for higher values. And then there are finance examples. There are finance examples. These we're not going to talk about what kind of chains they're using in the background. Finance examples including any invoice discounting, or any KYC solution, or let's say any lending platform, or you can say any swap platform, Uniswap or DEX, that could be part of finance domain. Then there are insurance examples where they can help you automate this part of insuring your assets. That could be in a digital world or in a physical world, right? When they try to, with Web3, what you can do is you can try to cut down the middle party where they help you settle the claim for your insurance. So Web3 can come in there, and the settlement part could be simulated with the smart contract. And then there are other solutions as well, which includes digital records, land records, and educational records, typical certification solutions. And then there are asset management, where you have NFT and tokenization solutions. You have DAOs examples, and then typical NFT examples. And again, DeFi and crypto being the primary one.